I know a lot about human rights. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking about human rights issues with college students and with family and friends.
What I know about human rights is that they belong to everyone, and every person that is defined as a human should receive the same and equal treatment of the rights.
I know that the international community has tried many attempts to set standards for what those are, and so that we can begin to regulate those internationally.
I know more, like, not so much globally. I know, like, more American, United States.
Human rights, I mean, it's kind of like the idea of civil rights or American rights. They're entitlements that you get solely based on the fact that you are a human being.
Human rights I would define as violating somebody's right to be treated fairly.
The most basic rights that an individual should have, like, past, like, necessarily common law, but just kind of almost intrinsic.
I would say my parents, mainly. They have similar beliefs as I do.
I've always kind of been fascinated with political science and politics, and so growing up, it's just something that I was always kind of interested in.
I would say nothing formal, just throughout the course of life and through different generations, having grandparents in World War II and then having parents who lived through a different era.
Well, me specifically, I'm a political science and an international affairs major, and that's been a common topic in a lot of my classes.
Flint, Michigan, what just recently happened, then I've only heard bits and pieces of it, but like I know like a general, like with them, with the water being like poisoned or undrinkable.
I would say human rights violations probably occur the most during war, with different imprisonment tactics and interrogation tactics.
We see it in the news, constantly. We see the human rights violations for people that are stopped by police officers trying to do their job, but most officers are above board and do the right thing, and then you have some that take a little bit of their power and it goes to their head, and they violate the rights of citizens that they've stopped.
I say when homosexuals and any of the LGBT community isn't allowed to marry, I say that's a human right violation.
I know that they have set a guideline for what human rights are, and they've started to compile a list of specific ones that we can start to uphold.
I also don't know that.
We used to have a list of the Human Rights Declaration by the United Nations. That was actually taken from our Constitution, U.S. Constitution, as well as from the Beatitudes of the Catholic Church.
I heard a little bit about it, but I didn't research it in depth. So let's say I heard of it, but I don't know the specifics.
You kind of have to know like where the current, you have to have a very firm grasp of where the current state is to even know like where to go next, which I don't have a big enough understanding of where like the current situation is.
Everybody that's come into the fold to really make a commitment that they're going to uphold these standards, and whenever we actually see a violation, such as in the Middle East and North Korea, that the entire international community that has made this commitment will actually follow through and take measures to enforce these human rights.
I think that the people that have the power, that have the money, that control things, won't let it happen because it's going to take away from their profit margins.
It is expected for the entire international community to act on this as one cohesive unit, and we fail to do that. And that's the point where humans are not upholding human rights. I think the phrase human rights becomes meaningless when we're not actually acting on it.
My generation hasn't done a very good job, and I'm hoping that your generation can make efforts to change the world and the way that we live.
Trying to keep the hope alive that people will receive equal treatment, especially when a lot of times what's portrayed in the media is a lot of negative news. So I'm hoping that people still see the positive side of things and still have hope.